We then have something we talked a lot about yesterday, and Vince gave us his thoughts on leading change. And we have this idea of us as a culture and change steward. So we're appreciating the culture of the organisation, the change that needs to happen, and we're shaping that for the organisation, becoming the custodians of that, if you like, the experts. We've got our technical stuff, the good old talent manager and organisational design. And that's quite tough, mastering the theory, the research and the practice. Because I think as you do these things as HR functions, you have to keep repeating them to get better and better at them. And then we have the strategy architect. So this is somebody who, let me see, has a vision for the organisation and can this in the future and can see how it's going to win in the future and plays an active part. An active part. Such a key word, isn't it? And it's so difficult to do. You know, an active part, sitting around the table, looking at the strategy and delivering on that. So 2 key words for me, being active and also delivering on that vision. So everything you do goes there. And this operational executor. So this is our basics, isn't it? This is our fundamental stuff. And this is a lot of what I see in the UAE. You know, people are at that transitional level. They're, you know, putting systems in place to actually get the basics right. And I think actually, you know, this is where our credibility comes from. You know, it's going to be difficult, isn't it, to be a credible activist if we can't actually, you know, pay people on time, for example. So, you know, don't underestimate the importance of all of these. And then we have the business ally. This is somebody and a department that contributes to the success of the business by knowing the social context of setting in which their business operates. So this idea of knowing what the value chain is. How does your business make money? You know, what's that about? How do you work with the other functions? How do you work with those other functions to work together towards that strategy that you've helped create? So something to think about. Any thoughts on that, anybody? If you're going to pick a top one that's most important? Maybe it's probably about where do you think you're spending a lot of your efforts now, and where would you like to be spending your efforts, perhaps? You know, yes, sir. Did you think there was a number one? Did you? Yes, yes.
Obviously,
I thought you'd put your hand.
Talent manager.
Ah, interesting. Yes.
But if we are not partnering with business, obviously, we can't be
Yeah.
managing these and retaining people.
Yes.
People would be important.
Yeah, good, good. And maybe that reflects what the CEO said yesterday. Get me the right people. Yeah, we get them in the organisation, and then let's make sure that that capability is then brought into the organisation and used in the right way. Okay. Any others? Anyone else want to share any thoughts?
what hat you are actually required to wear at what time.
Yes.
All these roles
Yeah.
are, they're supposed to be there.
Yes.
But then at times you have to be more active
Yes.
and agile on one particular role because the environment demands so.
Absolutely.
Staff management is looking for your input at that time.
Yeah.
But you should be capable enough of doing all this because this is a tall order.
Absolutely.
And one person as head of the HR doing all this
Yes.
would be a top HR professional anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you should have the skill set to do this.
Yeah, I think I think you're right around being a tall order. I think the business will drive the emphasis on those different areas and those different roles at different times, which I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's maybe something we should all aspire to, absolutely. But it's also about the team, and that's fitting in with what we talked about earlier. We do this together with the organisation. We don't do it on our own. We demonstrate these competencies. Let's have a look at the CIPD one I picked up as well. So this is the profession map, which again just gives another dimension to it. And it'd be interesting to see when you see this, which one you prefer. Which one resonates more with you as an HR professional. So basically the CIPD, they put a little bit of research together, and what they wanted to do was think about what does great HR look like? Okay, what does HR need to do to deliver sustained organizational performance? Okay, and this is what they came up with. So no surprises, in the center, you have the technical stuff. So we won't really, I don't want to concentrate on that necessarily. But on the outside, you have the behaviors that they've identified as being, driving HR that can then drive the organizational performance.
What are these bands? Band 1, 2?
Fantastic. From director, band 4, down to your junior HR person. So what they say for each of these within the profession, whether it be behaviours or technical skills, is that you have to have different levels and you move through those levels. So, which makes sense. Goes back to Adol's point around, not everyone can do everything. We've all got a role to play, haven't we, within the HR function. So looking at the behaviours, so focusing on those, we've got curious. So I want you to listen to the words and then just think which one you think is your top one here. So someone who's curious, somebody who's a decisive thinker, who's a skilled influencer, who's driven to deliver. Wow. Are you driven to deliver? Fantastic. Are you collaborative? And that goes back to the business ally that we saw in Ulrich's model. And are you personally credible? Do you have the courage to challenge? And are you a role model? So some 8 behaviours that we all want to focus on. Any ones? We can see some similarities with the Ulrich model. No surprises there around credibility, collaboration, and then some of the skills to bring Ulrich stuff alive. Any one, number one, people want to pick out? Any number one there? Any thoughts? Is it easy to be curious? How often, every day, do you get the chance to be curious, to be innovative, to be creative? When do you get a chance when was the last time you made a decisive decision? So I think it's always quite nice as well to relate it to your own roles and the opportunities that you have within HR, within what you're practicing, whether it be transformational or transactional. Okay. So that's the backdrop. I think what we'll look at now is we'll think about my own experiences, just to sort of bring those together. And then I want to understand what you think, because I think that's what's important here as HR professionals together. So, interesting, I've not done this in any order, but I'm a great believer in the whole business driving what we do. I've got no doubt that's why we're there, that's why we're employed, to represent the interests of the business and drive performance. I appreciate that's sometimes different in the NGOs, public sectors, in a different way. So number one is the business acumen. Certainly in my days in Marks and Spencer's, I was it was very tempted sometimes to be closeted at Baker Street in the head office. But actually, we sold stuff. That's what we did. And therefore, it was really important to go out there, talk to people, go to the shop floor. Every Christmas, we had to spend a week there because Christmas was our peak. And it was important as HR to support the business in what they were doing to deliver the Christmas season particularly. So if we had to recruit thousands of temporaries over that time, that's what we did. And we geared up very early to support the business. From August, September, we were already advertising, thinking about temporary staff who'd worked with us before. So it's very important to work very closely with the business. And that's an example from those days. Now, as a consultant, the approach that we take in our organisation is before we do any piece of work, whether it be organisational design, job evaluation, performance management, all the training stuff that was mentioned, before we even think about solutions, we go in to talk to the business. We interview the CEOs, we have the privilege of talking to the top teams and really understanding what the business is about. We were working with a retailer recently, and it was great because Asma's background is a lot of aviation work. I come from this retailing background. But Asma got so excited. It was great to see, great to see her really understand what retailing is about. So very, very important. In terms of strategic thinking, it's about how do we contribute to that strategy? Are we there leading that strategy for the business? And also, we can't forget the numbers. I'm thinking about the strategic stuff, and this is what Asma was saying yesterday. She said, didn't she? Every day when we were at Adat in Abu Dhabi, HR was the #1 topic, because we made sure that we were there driving and delivering. Every day at that senior team meeting, HR was on the agenda because of what the business needed. And that's what the business, where the business was at that time. I put here the numbers, and I think numbers are important. And impact is important. And I'm thinking about, I was in Oman last week with a client, and we were talking about performance management. And we were talking about all of the good stuff about performance management, about the cycle, and should you review, and should you not, and the ratings. And we had a great conversation, and we're working very collaboratively with the HR team there. And I think one of the things that we talked about was that, really what we mentioned was that they forgot to talk about performance. We probably spoke for about half an hour, and we didn't talk about actual performance, because that's what performance management is about. We sort of seem to get sidetracked around delivering stuff. As I say, there's nothing here in order. I was thinking about building relationships. How can you operate anywhere without having good relationships? And I've also put there internal consultancy. And going back to my M&S days, they wanted us to be an advisor. That's what they wanted. That's what the line wanted from us. That's what the senior teams wanted. And also there you can see HR law. In the UK, when I still talk to my HR colleagues, because of the complexity of the law, every student I think I came across was always concerned about the HR law. And at the bottom there, you have integrity, the fundamentals. We have to act with integrity. We have to be transparent and open. We have to be consistent and fair in our approach.
Sir, I have a question here.
Sure.
Capacity building is required for HR professionals to understand the numbers right, because what has been your experience in actually developing their capacity? Most of the time we have seen that the financial acumen is not that up to the mark when it comes to the HR, because they believe it's not their headache anymore.
Yep.
Other than few parameters such as turnover and
It's interesting because I was very tempted there, if I go back, to put financial acumen, and you'll notice I didn't, because I think at different levels, it does depend. I know when I was doing my MBA, I was the only HR person on that course out of 40 people, which I thought was really interesting in itself. That's going back to 2006, sort of 4, that sort of time. So it was interesting, actually, even HR wasn't coming to do those types of courses in the UK and focusing on, the CIPD type program, which was interesting, in terms of where you may get that kind of capability. So I think we have to ask our financial experts around how they can help us as we help them. So we look to support across the business when we're dealing with finance. And I think also about putting the measures in place that HR can then demonstrate that value. I think that's very important. So being aware of our own measures, even if we can't yet grasp those business measures. But I think the basics are HR measures, finance measures in terms of the business dashboard, how the business is reporting every week, being crucial.
So is dashboard being applied now very frequently, very commonly in the UAE market?
I think for from a business perspective, we're seeing that with our retailer. Interesting, with our retailer, they had so many, I mean, it's the nature of the business, isn't it? They have so many figures and things and measurements, and that they can get that information very easily. There are other clients which had were less able to do that. The airport was turnaround time.